Blade Talk with Scab and Joe.
The American experiment requires us all to push the boundaries.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Blade Talk with Scab and Joe. Sit back, relax. We got a pretty good show here. All right, I guess we are live. Let me know if you guys are hearing me okay, but I think we're good to go. Welcome to Blade Talk, everybody, with Scab and Joe. Very happy with the show coming in. Always a pleasure to have Curtis Iovito on. And Curtis, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. I do it the Italian way. It's Iovito. Okay, that's the Italian way, so I guess it's okay. From Spartan Blades, he's been on with us before, and we're so happy to welcome him into Blade Talk again. And always great to revisit Spartan Blades, seeing what they're up to, seeing some of their new stuff. I have some great stuff to show you from Spartan Blades that was sent in for review, and I'm just ecstatic over it. And we'll get the man himself in and get Scab into the room as well. But welcome, everybody, and we'll try to visit the chat. If you guys have any questions, put it into the chat. I'll try to get into the questions. Obviously, when it gets into the conversations, it's hard to visit the chat, but definitely ask the questions. And if we don't get to it, maybe ask them again, and we'll try to get the questions into Curtis, so maybe we can answer anything that you guys are inquiring about. But before we go any further, guys, as with my channel, which is JS Bladecraft, my name is Joe, obviously, and Scab with Quiet Boys Outdoors, with simultaneously going live on both channels right now. Support for our U.S. veterans, hashtag 22 a day, no more. Anything over zero is too much. What we're simply trying to say is, veterans, you have a place on our channel, our channels, and Blade Talk. Always relax, welcome, and let's have a good time together. So without further ado, let's get the man, the legend himself in the room. And Scab, yeah, we'll get Scab in too. All right, hold on a second. Welcome, gentlemen.
What's going on?
How you doing? When you said the legend himself, I figured you'd introduce Scab and bring him up.
I like the bust Scab's chops.
Yeah. Curtis, thank you for joining us. Joe, good to see you as always, my brother.
Good to see you too, my man.
Hey, Joe got some knives in, Curtis, and thank you for not sending me any. I always appreciate that so much. Does my heart good. I see. But I'm going to let Joe start us off because he got in one. I like them all. One's my all-time favorite. But there's one that I want to talk about that has probably the best handle going today. So, Joe, show us or tell us what you got.
Well, let me think about which one you're thinking is your favorite handle. And I would go out on a limb and say it's a Nesmuk.
Yeah.
For me. Anyway, for me, Nesmuk is just, it's literally beyond words. I mean, so guys, again, welcome everybody into the room. We're going to try to basically give you everything we can into this live and just jam pack it. The first thing that you notice basically about this knife is the sheath itself is just smooth. The texture is great. I love the button lock that you guys have as far as the release. So it's not the tension lock, guys. It's actually a button release. You know, right here. I'm hoping you guys can see it's in focus right here. It's like a little button right here that kind of releases the knife. So without that, it's not coming out, and you can't pull it out as much as you try. I mean, I'm sure if you try it's hard enough, it can, but you can't pull it out. You have to literally release the button in order to get it out. This is the Nesmuk, okay? It's the classic American Nesmuk style blade with that upsweep here. It's a great execution on the blade itself. The blade, we can talk about the blade all day long. This handle, and this is a Harzy type style handle, right?
It is.
When you put this in your hand, guys, there's just no words. I mean, I don't know if you guys could see. Look at the swell. Look at how they designed this thing. Look at the swell, how basically your hand completely surrounds the blade completely. It's honestly, for me, this is probably one of the most comfortable knives I have ever held. I haven't held as good quality as Scab has, but from whatever I've seen and held, this is beyond words. I mean, this is that comfortable of a knife. It really is.
You know, Joe, actually, when we developed that handle, Bill Harzy produced prototype handles for us. I'll never forget, it was out of brown canvas micarta. And he said, hey, I got some handles I think you're going to like. I'm going to bring them to Blade Show. And this was a few years back. And he had crafted completely identical left and right scales for the knife he put it on. And everybody walked up, other knife makers, you can see they take it, they look at the blade, and they feel it. And that's probably one of the first knives we ever made where people held by the blade and looked at the handle.
Yeah.
And it was so symmetrical. And the fact that Bill Harsey did that by hand, he's an absolute craftsman. We were just mind-boggled by how symmetrical they are. If you've ever been to Bill Harsey's shop, there's not a CNC in there. Right? He does it with hand tools, with files and sandpaper. It was absolutely amazing. We actually took Bill Harsey's handmade design, scanned it, made a solid object out of it, and then applied it texture on it afterwards. So, man, that handle, it was a team effort, but it was worth the wait, and it was worth the work that Bill Harsey put into it. It's fantastic. I love it.
And it's not just the handle and the shape itself. You guys put in, let me see if I can get focus. You guys put in just the right amount of tactile texture here that you can feel it. It's not to the point where it's too aggressive, where it's going to be, leaving indentations, but it's just enough where the knife is there. It's never going to move, and there's no slippage or anything like that. It's just, it's really, I don't want to be over dramatic by saying, but this is like freaking perfection in a handle. It's perfection.
It was a lot of work too. We obviously worked with the folks at K-Bar and some of their engineers as well. So there's a lot of people involved in the design of that handle. Of course, Bill Harsey, myself, and some of our engineers. And, to create that handle, to build a mold for it, it's pretty funny. They got it down. I probably should have drug them out. I know they're in a pile under my desk somewhere. But I actually have original handles that are super slick, kind of black plastic. Almost like this coffee cup here, just super. And I said, hey, that's not going to work. So the engineer said, well, we'll talk to the mold company and see what their capabilities are. And they sent me a little booklet. And you open it up and you kind of go, do you want texture number 1, texture number 2? And they were horrible. So I took one of our defensas that we make for some military folks, sent that to the engineers. I said, just replicate this.
Yeah.
And they just kind of looked at me like, what the hell are you talking? We can't do that. I said, let's try it. Run a tool path over the top of it. Imagine a step over. And I gave them measurements for a step over we use now. And man, it looked beautiful. But when you got back that pommel, you can see the math didn't compute. It was ugly as shit. But they figured it out. They got it, man. And I'll never forget seeing the first prototype for the mold. Because every time you make a mold and it's not good, man, they're not cheap. I'll tell you that.
No.
But man, we got it. And man, the sense of relief when we finally got the back portion of the butt of that handle correct, where you see where the breakouts all come together in the back. It was very difficult. But man, and you know what they say in designing things, good luck also counts, right? So we're pretty proud of that.
The balance.
The thing is with that knife, it's made to work. It's made for just about anything, and the handle is conducive for that. And all the work that Bill's done through the years I talked to him one time, and he said years ago, he and another gentleman would stick their hands in ice water for as long as they could come out, and then try to find different handle styles in different conditions. So, but that handle, that's probably my all-time favorite handle. It works, and it makes using the knife easy to use, easy to learn. Love it. Who came up with the button sheath? Where did that come from?
Honestly, that came from K-Bar. Okay. I know you guys know because I know you've interviewed John Stitt before, but in 2019, we teamed up with K-Bar, formed Pineland Cutlery, and they became our partners, which was great. We were able to help them with some things, capabilities we have, and vice versa. And even now, I think we're just getting to the point where we're starting to really see some synergy and do some new things that I guess we can talk about later. But that button lock on a sheath is something they did I want to say it was either with TDI or possibly something similar to it with it might have been John Boehner at TDI. I know they had something similar, and we developed it from there. But we saw it in another sheet that said we want to incorporate that. So we can't take credit for that design. That's more of a K-bar thing. But, man, they got that one right. In the Army, when we carried pistols, we always try to use level 2 retention. You're jumping out of helicopters, running around buildings, diving off things. And you never want to look down and find your secondary gone. So we always liked level 2 retention. Whether it was a button in old days, we had a snap, we'd learn to pop it off real fast. And then later on, they had things that help you draw earlier. But I knew I wanted that on a knife. One, because guys in the military, if they're going to parachute with it or conduct dangerous operations, you have to have some form of hard sheath, and you have to have some form of good retention. And that's why we have that additional strap on there. While it's not really necessary, it's nice to be able to put that Velcro over that handle, and now you've got double protection in the event you're not going to use it for a while, or you want to put it away and you don't want to lose it. So, but and that sheet's form fitted to the blade. A funny story about that nylon part in the back. I don't know if you're familiar with Tu Lam. Owns Ronin Tactics. He's an old Army buddy of ours. He's got a sewing operation, and we wanted the whole knife is made in the United States, and we wanted that hanger made in the U.S. To keep it Berry Amendment compliant. So Tu Lam said, "I'll sew that damn thing for you." And we're like, "Great!" So he actually has a small sew operation, Colorado. He makes those hangers for us. So it truly is kind of a friends and family type of knife. We've got Tu Lam involved in that. Bill Harzy designing it. Our family at K-Bar making it. We're designing, producing it out of here. So it's kind of an effort by everyone involved. So it's why I love that knife so much. And of course, over time, you learn about geometry and what cuts. And the difference between knowing and understanding is experience. Well, you get that by making a few duds through the years. But, man, the geometry on that one with that high panel height grind line. I keep one in my garage just for puttering around the yard.
Yeah. I absolutely adore that knife. I think I did a review on it a couple weeks ago, and it just, man, it was fun. I love doing it, right? I love testing, love doing all that. Some of them are stressful, but that one was fun, and it's one of those where you kind of have to watch it because you can look around and have an hour, 2 hours worth of footage. And you're like, oh, shit, I got to pare it down. But it's just one you can work with. And I think that's big, too, not only in military application, but just, a lot of times we go camping and you do shit like that. You're always, once you're set up, I spend a lot of time whittling, a lot of time around the fire. And that's a knife that you just sit there for hours and get lost in it. I love that damn thing.
We talked a long time about doing a Nesmuk, but there was actually a friend of ours. His name's Peter Ma, and his wife's a judge in Poland. He's a photographer. Does a lot of farming type, marketing type things, but has always been an avid knife collector. And he was introduced to me by Chris and Ann Reeve, just because he's such a good guy. And he's an avid outdoorsman. He's constantly in the mountains of Poland and all throughout Europe. And he begged Bill Harzy to make him a custom version of that knife, probably for 15, 16 years.
Really?
Bill finally made him a custom version. I saw it when he gave it to him at Blade Show, and I was like, Bill, if we don't do that, we're making a mistake.
Yeah.
You look at when Sears carried that thing, when he said, hey, I don't know if you guys know, he's an avid American outdoorsman, very small, frail fella.
Little guy.
He's the inventor of some of the very first lightweight canoes in the United States. But he said, you need a knife like this. It was a Nesmuk, a small hatchet, and a pocket knife. And with those three things, you could do anything. And, he traveled all over the United States in wilderness with his Indian guide and friend, Nesmuk, right? That's where the name came from. It was Sears' Indian friend, guide, mentor, Nesmuk, that he took the name from. And now you understand after holding that thing, and at least I do, why even a young, skinny guy who's lightweight and doesn't have a whole lot of muscle can get a lot of work done. Because now it comes down to geometry, right?
it goes back to, Curtis, to ease of use, right? Because your customer base, I'm sure, is huge. A lot of it's military, but not all of it by far. When my grandson and things like that, I've got one that's young, and then I got one, well, they're both young, but one's 8 or 9, and it's starting to get that time. That's a knife I can put in his hand while I'm there so he doesn't stab me with it. But that's a knife that's easy to learn to use. It just seems like it's well balanced. It's not going to slip out of your hand. There's no hot spot. It's just really, really well done. Really well done.
That's the way. This is what struck me about the knife when I first took it out. And you just take the 2 fingers, and this is my thing. Like, I put it up and down, and I see basically how well it stays balanced. The balance of this knife is just, it's perfect. It's perfect.
It's on purpose.
And then it just, for me, it just basically stays completely leveled. Okay. In terms of basically how the control of the tip, the edge alignment, it stays perfectly, straight and even in my hand and comfortable in my hand without anything that's basically swaying one way or the other. That's just me. That's just the way I feel about it.
Joe, a lot of times when we design knives, we do them on a computer first. Bill Harsey usually builds a prototype. We think, hey, this feels pretty good. We build it on a computer. And with SolidWorks, the program we use, there's a thing where you can input the materials it's made out of. It's called mass properties. And when you look at the mass properties of a knife after it's built on a computer, it'll show you where the center balance point is on that object you're making. A lot of times what we'll do is we'll take weight out from underneath the handle, small little octagonal cuts that allow us to adjust the mass properties to be able to place the weight of that knife right over the index finger. So most of our knives, as we learn and we go and make fixed blade knives, they tend to balance better. Now, a dagger, you make heavy on the handle end, because daggers, regardless of what you're told, they're made for pounding. Mm-hmm. That's how you use a dagger, right? So we like to make them handle heavy, so you feel as if you've got a weighted hand. Lighter fighting knives, you got to adjust it, because you don't want a knife when the guy adjusts his grip. You don't want that knife to tumble out. With working knives, we find that mass properties are better. Now on that knife, a fighter, that Nesmuk, we built it. We just did a full tang all the way through and put in mass properties. And by, like I said earlier, good luck counts too. The mass properties were right over the index finger. We didn't have to make any adjustments. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know if that's a testament to Bill Harsey. I guess it is, right? If he makes it, it works, and it's good, he gets the credit. And that credit's well deserved, because we didn't have to do anything. We didn't have to lengthen the knife any. We didn't have to back it off. We didn't have to make it thinner. We didn't have to adjust the panel height or the grind. It was just there. So a little bit of luck too, right?
Jimbus was asking, Jimbus Maximus was asking in the chat. Yes, this is a Harsey design knife. This is the Nesmuk. Okay, the Harsey Nesmuk. You can definitely find that on their site.
How many designs does Bill have with you guys?
Oh man, that's a good question. Well, we did some aren't here anymore. We did the Model 1, but those were all hand bound. Well, I think I have one. So this is the first design we ever did with Bill Harsey. It's called the Model 1. This is one he made me for my birthday in 2010. We made this, and Bill Harsey hand ground every single one of them. And at the time, they were S30V. I think he did 250 of them, and he just said, guys, I'm smoked. So we said, okay, that's all we're ever going to make of the Model 1. We made a shorter version called the Model 2, which did really well. But the Canadian, an element of this Canadian Special Forces asked us to do a knife for them. They liked the Model 2, but wanted some slight changes. When we made that Defensa, the sales on Model 2 crashed because people loved the Defensa. So we did those. We did Spartan Harsey Folder, the 325, the Clandestina. So probably good seven or eight designs.
I thought so. The Defensa is my all-time favorite knife, fixed blade that you guys do, hands down. But there's a lot of reason for that too. My grandfather served in World War II in North Africa and Italy. So anything to do with the Italian campaign just really resonates with me. But the defense is it's like my favorite. I could do a video on that every week and never get tired of it. I love that down.
You know, we love that one for a lot of reasons. You know, when we first did the Model 1, Mark and I were in a Civil War mule barn, right? It was just the two of us, and we had a girl on the phone. We met Bill Harzy. We invited him out here to the USASOC sniper competition that Mark and I used to be very involved in. And he hung out with us in our barn and just kind of shook his head. He's like, "You guys are crazy, man." But we became fast friends. And about not even quite a year later, he's like, "Do you guys want me to design a knife for you?" That's like starting a garage, you know, with you and your brother. Carol Shelby, you know, walks the door. He's like, "Hey, man, can I hang out with you guys for a while?" I mean, that's what it was like for us. We were afraid to say yes. We didn't, you know, how do we pay the guy? It was, and we've been fast friends ever since. So, you know, that's part of the reason we love that Defensa. But the other reason is, you know, a lot of times when the military calls you and said, "Hey, we want a new knife," there's about a 10% chance it's going to happen for all kinds of reasons. Government contract reasons, critical needs statements. It doesn't happen very often. You can probably count the ones, the K-bar fighting knife, the Yarborough. There's just not a whole lot of knives that have stand the test of time for the military. But when we got a call from the Canadians, they said, "Hey, we want you guys to make us a regimental knife." And of course, my first thought was, why don't you ask a Canadian knife maker? And I talked to the contracting officer, and he's like, "Do you want me to hang up and call a Canadian?" I was like, no. Right? I just got to ask, why are you calling us? And it's kind of funny. A few of the guys in a Canadian special operations element had worked with my old group, First Special Forces Group. We have a thing called Menton Day, where we celebrate the First Special Service Force together. So the Canadians come down and we have a big ball and we all get drunk and drink on the grog bowl, and you know, they bring their drum and bugle corps guys down. We have a blast. They had those memories. They said, "Listen, we've got a combined history with the First Special Service Force, First Group, our group. We know Bill Harzy worked with Al Marr and Colonel Applegate. And quite honestly, the day we get the knife, we want some history built into it."
Yeah.
And, you know, so it was pretty special for us, man. And we serial number for them, put their specific markings on just for them, and they get sent to their regiment, and they've been buying them for years now. So, you know, not only do we like the shape and the fact that it's a clean, simple knife that doesn't need instructions, but that history built into it was kind of special for us.
Yeah.
You know, the Canadians, they perform internationally and domestically. So they're like, "Hey, one day we might be in the desert. The next day we may be jumping out of a helicopter. The next day we may be in the woods. So we need something a little larger, could be used as a fighter, could be used for utility." So we took all their requirements, melted it together. And it's funny. We started getting calls from all kinds of guys in the Canadian Army. Said, "Well, I think it should do this, and I think it should do that." I said, "Hey, listen, we're starting to build this knife by committee. I don't know what we're going to end up with, but it's probably going to look like something on the front of a Dungeons and Dragons book." So they said, "You're right. Give it to Bill Harzy. Tell him to do it, and then let's get it done." And that's what we ended up with.
It's clean, man.
So
clean,
a lot of history in that knife, and they gave Bill Harzy the freedom to do what he does. So I think that's why he appreciates that one as well.
Yeah, that one's easily my favorite fixed blade of yours, and it's in my top 3 or 4 fixed blades of all time. It's just clean. You know what I'm saying? It's just a clean knife. It looks like a knife. It's aggressive looking. It checks every mark for me. Now the coating on that is that the PVD or is that Cerakote?
It's PVD. It's zirconium carbon nitride.
I can feel it.
So they vaporize zirconium, and then it's on there at a molecular level. It's only about 3 to 5 microns thick. So it's about the thickness of a hair, a little less. But they call it DOC or diamond light coating because it's just underneath the hardness of that. Actually, the hardness of the coating is harder than the substrate, steel underneath it. So, and it's funny again. The Canadian said, They said, we want CPM steel out of New York. We want it double deep cryogenically heat treated and tempered. We want PVD coating. And I'm like, man, if they come up with many more requirements, we're not going to have the ability to make this thing. In hindsight, years later, it's like I think they did a good job of making sure we got to do it. So
Now, is the originals, were they S35VN?
the very first ones we did, I believe, were S30V. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
Then we did it.
Okay.
And then we went to S35, S45, and now MagnaCut.
Okay. Okay. I got Kurt, my buddy, a couple streets over. He's the one. I went with him, and I texted him before we went on. So, Kirk, if you're watching, put the knife. When we worked together, I went with him to buy his first Spartan blade. It's no longer made. And when he got that Defensa, I'm like, dude. And he said, man, anytime you want it, it's yours. And I just, man, it's clean. I like the grip. I like everything about it. Can you show that Model 1 again? Would you mind, Kurt?
No.
I'm blind as a damn bat.
I'm going to put solo.
There we go. This handle, I think, is 10% larger than a Defensa. It's a big old honking handle. You see how much I got sticking out there.
It is a bigger handle, yeah.
And these were all ground by Bill Harsey.
What is that? It's like a Damascus, right?
Yeah, it's actually a Torres Damascus, and it's funny because I came home from Iraq and there was a knife case sitting on my desk, and I asked my business partner, we all know Mark. I asked Mark Carey, "What's this? What's this?" He's like, "Well, open it, jackass." And this was in there. He's like, "Happy birthday!" But he goes, "We barely got it out of there." So that's the steel that came out of it.
That's tight.
And if you look at how close, when I got it backwards,
Really,
if you look. I mean, they barely look at the tip. They barely got that knife out of there.
Oh, wow. That is tight.
Yeah. So it still fits in there.
Interesting.
I made a mistake of taking this to a custom knife show one time. I was just showing people because I thought it was cool. I wanted to show it off because Bill had just made it for me. And I was lucky to get out of the building with it, man. People were making me stupid offers for it. And I would never, ever sell this knife, ever.
No, you can't. That thing's badass, man.
Oh, I like the display. Was that a magnetic display?
Yeah, it's
I like that.
Craftsman up the street made it for me years ago. Yeah.
Wow, that's a great idea. That's a great way to display your knives. You need some of those, Scab. You need about 50 of those, Scab.
Yeah, I do.
You know?
I need Bill and Curtis to make me a Model 1, and I'll get me one of those stands.
You know, we've talked about, because those were all hand ground by Bill and serial numbered. We always thought it'd be cool to do a production version of the Model 1 someday. And maybe do them in black. We did 250 of those knives, and I think we did 4 of them in black for an international sniper competition here at Fort Bragg. And I recently saw one for sale at a show. I'm like, did that guy sell it, or did he get stolen out of his garage, or did the guy die? You know, it's neat when you see these knives years later. You kind of wonder what they've gone through, where they've been.
Yeah.
But
that's dope.
Maybe someday we'll make some.
Joe, what's the third? Well, let's talk about the defense that you got in MagnaCut.
Well, number one, this has a little bit of a different level of sharpness compared to the other ones. Is it me, or is it because it's MagnaCut? But I find that this one, the sharpness level right out of the box is just a different level than the other knives.
I think any knife company or any knife maker will tell you this. Over time, you learn how to sharpen things. Yeah. And you learn how important, I mean, that's just the case.
It's got better and better,
you learn about geometry, and you learn that, a good steel is great and it's a good foundation. But if you don't get the geometry right, it almost doesn't matter what the steel is. But if you can combine the steel, you understand how sharp you can get it and what angle you can put on there without having it chip, break, and ruin it. You can make for a better knife. And we're always working on sharpening. I mean, as time goes on, in the last year, I've sharpened less and less and less. And some of the guys in the shop are getting better than me. They're just it's fantastic. And it's done by feel and it's done by touch. And you can get a knife sharp and then you can get it sharp. And through the years, you'll get a new guy, and like, hey, man, got a knife back. It's just not sharp enough. I mean, you sharpen it the same day and send it back. But I think we're at a period right now where our knives are sharp as shit right now. So,
Yeah.
and if they're not, man, the customers, they'll tell you. They'll jump online in a heartbeat. We've had some months in the past, a few years back, where they were sharp, but they weren't. People were having to touch them up. So you learn,
That's
you
the
learn by
first
doing.
thing that people will complain about. And me coming as a mainly a sword guy too, that's
Oh yeah.
something I look for immediately. But yeah, no issues with the sharpness level. But this just felt to me just step up, But very interested. Just so you guys know, because a lot of people asking in chat, this is a Defensa. This is a new Defensa that's made in MagnaCut. So the previous ones were the S30. You said right, S30 for a long time.
S30V, S35VN.
35.
Previous last year, S45.
Yeah.
So last
45.
year, on Black Friday, we changed over to MagnaCut and blew out our S45 stuff.
Right. And I see a lot of your knives from the catalog that I would like to go through this catalog too for 2024. A lot of them are pretty much in MagnaCut too. A lot of the newer models.
Yeah. Almost everything now is MagnaCut, with I think the exception of the Moros. We did a large batch of those last year. We said, hey, we know it's going to do well. Let's just make a bunch of them so we can save some machine time. So we still have some of those in S45. Now, some people like S45. So if you're still an S45 guy and you're still trying to find some, I think Moros is the only blade we have now that's in S45.
S45. Okay. Now, how do are you guys comfortable with MagnaCut, with working with MagnaCut now? Because I know you're going up to about 63 right now, 61 to 63 on the HRC on that.
Right. And we're at 62.5. Reason being is there's a heat factor involved in applying PVD coating.
Okay.
So, we have to balance things. 62 and a half, we're getting great performance, and nobody's, big complaints about sharpening. The thing with MagnaCut, while we love it, when it goes through the heat treat process, you have to use a high quality vacuum furnace that holds a very exact temperature. There's not a lot of wiggle room for MagnaCut. I wouldn't feel comfortable heat treating MagnaCut in my garage. I just wouldn't. And I did that for years when I was younger. Because you've got to have the ability to hold temperature. So we did our first batch of MagnaCut. We did some daggers, a small run, and make sure it worked okay. We want to do some testing and tip testing and that kind of thing. And we warped a few blades, had some issues. We talked to the folks at Crucible, Bob Skavitsky, their metallurgist. He's like, hey, man, follow the instructions to the letter, keep a constant temperature. We sat down with our heat treaters, talked to them, and they're like, we got it. We got it. And we haven't had a single freaking issue with MagnaCut since the day we used it. We haven't seen any, I've heard stories. We haven't seen inclusions. We haven't seen cracks. We do periodic testing. It just works and people love it. But you got to know how to heat treat it, and you got to know how to do it properly.
Listen, Scab knows, I know. That's one thing that we preach on our channels all the time. Sometimes it's not ever about the steel. It's just about the maker and how they're treating the steel. It's like you look at K-Ball with their 1095s and their OEMs with that. It's just they're professionals at this point. So that all of the Krovan 1095s are going to be pretty much on target, being reliable steels, knife after knife after knife.
Yeah. And, that 1095 Krovan, I was very fortunate 2 years ago. I got to go with John Stitt, who's our CEO, president of K-Bar. I got to go to watch that steel being made. And there's some pretty proprietary ways in the way it's when they melt the heats and they remove the impurities. I was really surprised by the science of it. That 1095 Krovan is some great 1095 steel, man. It really is. It's kind of, that would say proofs in the pudding. K-Bar has been using it for years, so people know it's good and they trust it.
That's an old steel. I talked to John about that a couple of weeks ago when he was on. I mean, it's like from the old Sharon steel. But if you do it
Yes.
and you do it well, like your C-Cree, it's 1095 Krogan, correct?
It is.
Yeah.
And I literally, Curtis, no bullshit. Well, I cut my sandwich with it today. I felt the need to do that. At Jimmy John, they love to see.
Somebody requested that, actually.
Yeah, they did.
They did.
Well, as soon as I saw it, I said, yeah,
that.
let's do it. So I put a short out. But before I walked in the house, because I thought this was at 7:45, not 7:30, my bad. I was literally out there, and this ain't no shit. I was literally out there beating it through a piece of red oak from West Virginia. And I'll be honest with you, what I was trying to do is I got the stump. What I wanted to do is I hammered it in the top and I spun it and I wanted to drop it. You know how you reverse baton.
Sure.
And I was out there, I literally I've got the footage. I'll probably post it later, but I was out there for probably 2 to 3 minutes of batoning and slamming. And dude, I was just sitting here playing with this and I shaved a place on my leg still. It's that sharp. But what you guys did with this, and I talked to John about this a little bit, you've got a nice toothy edge on this.
Yeah.
I freaking love that, man.
Well, Scab, I got a funny story about that. I went up to K-Bar to visit them years ago, and I was walking through, watching people making some of K-Bar's knives. And there's an older fellow there that worked in the sharpening section. And he was using pretty rough grit to sharpen the knives. And I was like, I'd worked with CPM steels all my life.
Yeah.
I used to use 01 back in the day. But I watched a guy sharpen it, and I said, when we sharpen ours, we start with a 180 and go to a fine 400. It gives you great edge. I said, I've been doing it that way for, 10, 15 years. And he looks at me and he's like, well, we've been doing it this way for about 120. I was like, well, sir, you have a great day. Thanks for the work you're doing. And he's the same guy putting those toothy edges on those things. And but I know what you mean when it actually comes to cutting rope, string, wet nylon, that slight toothy, sharp, high carbon steel edge it just tears stuff up.
Well, Curtis, honestly, for what I do, for what Joe does on the channel, to demonstrate knife or just camping or whatever, the toothier edge just works better for me. Now, if I'm cutting water bottles or we've got S35 or whatever, polish it up, that's great. But I found with the 1095 Krogan, 5160, things like that, the toothier edge, it just, for me, I like it. It benefits the channel more. And I seriously, I absolutely adore, and it's still sharp, man. It's sharp as shit.
Guys, look at that point. Look at that point. Look at that reinforced. I'm telling the chat, look at that reinforced tip. That is just, that's like almost similar to, in Japanese terms, there's a geometric called an unukubi zakuri, and it has that same type of like diamond, tip, that reinforced tip. I mean, this thing, for penetration wise, I mean, I saw your videos. I mean, I can't wait to use this thing, but this thing is just, I mean, you put this thing in your hand and right, Scab, it wants to cut. It wants to move forward,
The thing about the C-Cree is people say it and they go straight to chopper, and yes, it is. Yeah, it absolutely. This is one of the most versatile versatile knife designs out there. You can do anything with a knife. Right here. Yep. You can do anything with it. You can bushcraft with it. You can hit your steel thing right here with it. You can do what I mean. Blackie Thomas, an old Southern woodsman, Curtis. Blackie Thomas carries one of these constantly, a C-Cree. It's one of the most versatile designs out there. And I think a lot of times, Joe and Curtis, it's one of the more underrated because people push the chopping. Yeah, great chopper. Love this as a chopper. But I can do anything I need to do with this knife. That's the beauty of this knife to me, personally.
Yeah. And
that's why most bushcrafters are going towards the C-Cree type of geometric because of this piece right here. You know what was interesting about Blackie, since you mentioned Blackie? I've seen one of his videos where he has a million videos that he talks about his C-Cree and how he sharpens it. Now, what he does is this portion of the blade right here, I don't know if you see my finger, okay? This is where he has more of the thinner, slicier edge, because that's where he's processing and slicing wood. Here he has more of like a 20 degree. He has different degrees, so he sharpens each part of the blade in different ways because he uses each part of the blade depending on what he's doing in terms of bushcrafting in different ways. So he has to have each piece of this blade sharpened differently, which I found mad interesting, and it makes a lot of sense.
You know, I don't know if you mentioned it, but that's also 1/4 inch thick steel.
Yeah.
He did that to add some weight. And I'll tell you one other thing we considered on geometry of that blade was running the panel height or the main bevel all the way up off the top. Now, some people like that because it allows them to slice through things easier.
Right.
But when you look at a hatchet or an axe and the geometry, it's a bunch of weight behind a V and a straight. And I think Scab, you can probably test this. I saw you chopping logs in half with it. That angle up to that flat almost works as an axe. It almost pushes the wood apart. So we wanted people to have the ability to cut intricate things, like, in carving and that type of thing with the inner curve. But we wanted that heavy weight, so we made it a 1/4 inch. And we didn't run that grind all the way up the top, which is easy to do. It's a setting on the grinder. We didn't do that because we found that when we cut branches in half or we baton with them, it tended to push them apart. They tended to separate easier. It was a little unexpected, but we liked the outcome,
When I was out there earlier, and I really wished I would have put a camera or a microphone on it. With that red oak, that West Virginia red oak, as it went in, probably as I sunk it, you could start to hear the wood separate.
Yeah.
Right. So as it went down, it would separate. It would push, and I love that sound because the wood's giving. That 1/4 inch is just thumping in there. It's actually, again, it's just a monster, and I love the tip.
That was I'm sorry, I didn't mean to turn my back on you, but there's a sister knife to those two. It's a fighter.
Okay.
So and our hope was that, for those guys that simply want a good military knife for military operations, we could give them that handle and then give them something a little more traditional that they're used to. So
I love that. What now? Is that the Harsey fighter?
It is.
The Harsey fighter, yeah.
This is I have a box of prototypes underneath my desk. So this, at some point, this was a prototype. Otherwise, it wouldn't be in there. But it has the same sheath.
Love the sheath. I love the fighter, man. That's a gorgeous knife. And it does. The handle does match. I like that a lot. Yeah. In December, Curtis, I'm going with Blackie. He's going to teach a course on the C-Cree. And I'm going to do a lot of the demonstrate the cutting and things like that. This one's definitely going. It has to go.
Thank you.
I got a couple that I'm sending over to you too, Scab. I want to send you that.
A load of them, but that's what it's about. But this one's going. And I'll be honest with you, this one will probably be my belt knife the whole time there.
All right.
Talk to us about the tip a little bit, Curtis.
All right. We wanted a strong tip. We just assumed because it was full tang, people were going to be beating on these things. So there's two reasons we made that tip. One, obviously, so people don't break it off, because we know they're going to beat the crap out of things with this knife. But the other thing was we thinned it through the middle a little bit. If you look at the geometry, what forms that diamond in front is the way the geometry comes in and goes back out again. So what we're trying to do is leave some forward weight. It's not a super long knife because we wanted people to be able to carry it, but we were looking at ways to add more weight to that front end to make it blade heavy to help it assist as a chopper. Yeah. So that's why that tip is the way it is.
But I like the way now in your service. Have you served beside the Gurkhas?
A few times. I'm laughing because
Did you really?
We
Curtis, I
lost.
think we lost you there, buddy. We lost your audio. We lost.
stand too, working his contract.
Oh, there you go. There you go. You got it. I got you back.
Hey, repeat that because we lost you.
We lost you before. You had said about a funny story about the Gurkhas.
Oh yeah, I was over. I was doing this thing called the Cambrian Patrol in England. It's a infantry long range patrolling competition. So we wanted to zero some guns. So the Brits from the 7th Royal Horse Artillery took us out to the range, and they had Gurkhas out there running the ranges. And I'll never forget the old British guy yelling at us, "Don't shoot the Gurkhas! Don't shoot the Gurkhas!" I was like, "Well, why does that happen or something? Do people shoot the Gurkhas on the range?" And then anyway, so then of course, I ran into some of them in Afghanistan and Iraq every once in a while, working as doing security stuff. Great guys, and they are funny too, man.
My grandfather said, he told me, he never said much about the war. I was 17 when he passed, so he wouldn't, But I asked him one time, I said, "Granddaddy, who are the toughest?" And before he said the Gurkhas. And you're talking about a dude that was born, Granddaddy was 6'4" and probably 220, 230 in the 1940s. He was a monster.
Yeah.
But he said the Gurkhas. I said, well, he said it's the Gurkhas. He said, no matter what you say. He said it's the Gurkhas. He said they never sleep and they never quit smiling. And he said if they quit smiling, you're dead. You're done.
Yeah, that's funny.
That's exactly what he said. He said some of the best guys, he said they'd go out at night and come back. He said my grandfather was a tech sergeant over a 30 cal water cooled machine gun. And he said there were literally a couple of nights they were on guard duty, and he said it'd be getting close to dawn, and he'd look over and one of them be sitting by him and eased up and sat beside him. But he loved them, absolutely loved them. But I love that you've made this night. Joseph?
I have actually a question. Apex Alchemy, he had a question for you, Curtis. If you could answer it, I'll put it up on screen. If you can't read it, I'll read it for you. It says here, Curtis, if you're able to share the information, because he's actually doing a lot of his HRC testing on his channel. So I think that's why he's curious. If not, I completely understand. Do you know what model HRC tester you use at Spartan Blades? This is strictly to feed my curiosity.
No, I don't. Actually, our metallurgist, we have a local metallurgist, and this isn't a trade secret. I'll put it out there. They're called American Metal and Heat Treating. It's our heat treater. We have them do all our testing for us because we can buy a tester and use it. And most shops have them, but man, they're just really, really good because they do aerospace parts. They do Honda jet engine parts and things like that. So we have periodic testing. And I just talked to them about it about a week ago because they put some heat treat markings right in the middle of some of our blades. So, but no, the answer is I do not. I do not. Okay. Every batch we make is tested. That'll tell you. And then of course the data sheets come with it, and that's why I know that they're at 62.5 on average.
Right. Billy does a lot of testing. He got one and does a lot of testing. I'd send him some work stuff. He did those. He does heat treat testing, which I find fascinating. And he's a good dude too. We had an old one. I gave it to a young kid that came in here. We would test them, and they're always right where they're supposed to be, and right where they're supposed to be, and right where they're supposed to be, and right. Finally, we realized our heat treater, they're world-class heat treater. We trust them, and that's where we leave it. So. Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. Now, how long? Let me ask you this: you get started, you and Mark get started. Mm-hmm. How long did it take? Like when you talk about a world-class heat treater, because you were special operations and you guys think differently. That's a fact, right? How long did it take you to kind of really start going, okay, we want them? This is what, was it trial and error, or did you know, were they recommended, like on the heat tree type guys?
We did our research. We did an area study. It's basically an area study. whenever you go into a country, you get your CIA, fact book, and you get intel from different sources. You put it together. I always say you got to be familiar with their operational environment. So, not knowing what we didn't know, we just said, let's find the experts. Who are the experts? Well, there's Bill Harsey, there's Chris Reeve. Let's call them and ask them how to do it. We didn't realize, you don't get to just call them. So we didn't know better. We're like, who does the best heat trading? So we went up and talked to some guys here in North Carolina at NASCAR, and we're like, hey, we're looking for a great heat trader. You guys have any recommendations? And every one of the NASCAR guys like, yeah, all our rods, our pistons, our suspension parts, they're all done by American Metal and Heat Trading. And so we researched them, found out it was the Bram family, is the family ownership of American Metal and Heat Trading. They're in High Point, North Carolina. We looked into them. We found out that they were doing all the Honda Jet turbine parts, because it's funny. We were told by a lot of people when we started out, you can't make knives in North Carolina. And we're like, well, what do you mean you can't make knives in North Carolina? Like, you got to go to Oregon. Because nobody knows how to make knives in North Carolina. I was like, well, they're pieces of metal that are sharp, pointy, and have a handle on it. What do you mean? So we were kind of wanted to prove that we could do it. So we just said, what is the best coating to put on a knife? It's PVD coating. Well, who does that well? Iron Bond. They're right here in Greensboro, right? Who does the best heat trading? Of course, Bose, but obviously he was employed at the time, right? Yeah. Peters, we knew they would do large, small batch stuff, but we were having to ship that stuff in the mail in order to do that. So we're like, how do we streamline our process, try to crunch the cost down as much, but have world-class heat trading? And this Bram family, American Metal Heat Trading, kept coming up. And we went to them, and at the time we were using S30V. So it's kind of funny. We walk into their office, we sit down, and they're like, well, what do you guys got? What can we do for you? I said, well, we have some very special steel. I don't know if you're going to be able to heat treat it or not. And they're like, well, what is it? So it's called CPM S30V. It's made by a company called Crucible in New York. And they all just started laughing at us, right? They're like, yeah, we've been heat treating that shit since the day they made it. We do it for aircraft companies, suspension parts for NASCAR. We got it. So I figured, if they can do turbine parts for a Honda Jet and they can do, suspension and engine parts for NASCAR, we'll probably work on our knives. And you know what? Heat treat is something, as a knife maker, you need to monitor all the time. And I got to be honest with you, man, it's like autopilot with them. Yeah, we do periodic testing, or we'll hang out with those guys and they'll throw some stuff and prove it to us. But we've got a great working relationship, and they make it easy on us, to be honest. And we trust them with the soul of our knives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
Curtis,
when I just kind of want to stay on that pattern, and we're not going to go through each individual thing, but just like when you're starting up, was it harder than you thought? Like, did you think, we're going to just make some knives and it's going to be cool, or what was the thought process there? Because you had to obviously have a plan, right?
Well, let me tell you how we got there, I guess. Mark and I worked together for years. We were at Fort Lewis together. I ran a sniper committee at Fort Lewis. He was on a mountain team, I think, at the time. We both ended up in Okinawa, Japan, working for on the counterterrorism unit, right? We were both in a sniper section. And as chance would have it, we ended up at Fort Bragg working at the sniper school. At the time, it used to be called SOTIC, the Special Operations Target Interdiction Course. And to be honest with you, sniping, shooting is all I've ever known. And the thought of getting out of the Army and doing something different was terrifying. The global war on terrorism, that was just kicking off. I only did one trip to Iraq, and I did that out of a schoolhouse to go protect somebody by request, which, wasn't very exciting. Didn't see a lot of combat. But it's time to get out. And I was like, what the hell am I going to do? Well, Ballistic Armor Corporation had come by as guests of the Army and watched us do some training. And they asked if anybody was getting out soon. And Mark and I were both getting out. And they're like, you're hired. I'm like, for what? And they're like, well, you know what you're doing here. We like the way you talk, but you want to do marketing for us? And I was like, sure. And Mark said, I like doing administrative type things. And they're like, well, we need a director of overseas operations to armor vehicles. So I developed armor products. Mark set up overseas operation that armored most of Tacom's heavy vehicles overseas. And we're like, hey, man, a lot of this stuff we did in the military like directly relates to what we're doing. And we're making a buttload of money for this company. But we were working on a bonus system. And when bonus time came around, we didn't get anything. We're like, okay, we understand how the world works out here now. So we said, hey, we're doing our own thing. We're not working for anybody else. What do we want to do? Well, of course, first thing we thought is we'd build sniper rifles, right? Yeah. At the time, as my whole life, it's all I lived for. We knew almost everyone in the industry. Several companies said, hey, well, listen, you guys come with the company, you name it, we'll put your name on the rifles and we'll build them for you. But man, we looked at that industry, and as much as I love shooting and long range marksmanship, as an industry, they were number one buyers of knives so they could stab each other in the back. And the margins weren't all that great in firearms. We knew they were ITARs, and they'd be hard to sell overseas. But I had made knives as a hobby. And I said, hey, man, I think if we're going to choose something, I think the risk is lower in knives. I love knives. Mark loves knives. We carried them all our life. So we did 2 business plans. One was to build sniper rifles and weapon systems. The other one was knives, and knives made the most sense, especially with the amount of money we had, which was next to nothing. So that's how we got our start there. But we treated it as a mission, right? So we gathered up information about our operational environment. We looked at the risks. We figured out ways to do risk mitigation. We developed a few different courses of action, came up with a hybrid, and then said, hey, it's time. We mitigated our risk. We formulated a plan. Now let's execute the plan. And now here we are. Here,
That's dope. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
I've been curious.
Where is it? Was it super risky? Yeah. I have been working as a government contractor for a government organization in Iraq and Afghanistan for years. I set up a program doing that. It paid very, very well. So my risk wasn't that bad, but I had to walk away from that job. Mark lived off his investments. I quit my job. I told my wife, and to her credit, and Mark's wife credit as well, they said, hey, whatever you guys think's best, we got your back. We're with you. So I quit a job making rock star money to run a company for no pay for a few years, but it paid off.
Good. That's awesome.
The biggest reason people fail at things is because they don't try it in the first place.
That's right.
How come you're not a Green Beret? I never tried. That's a good way not to be one. Why are you guys doing a podcast? There's so many podcasts out there. Why are you doing it? Because I don't give a shit about anybody else. And I know I'll fail if I don't try. Right?
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Curtis, there's a couple of things people are throwing into the chat that I want to try to address if we can.
Sure.
A lot of people wondering with Ethan Becker, since you guys are kind of with K-Bar, any plans with Ethan Becker designing any knives for Spartan?
No, none right now. We're good friends with Ethan too. So, and him and Bill Harsey are good friends. I know they visit with each other every once in a while. No, there's no plans to do that. That's kind of a K-Bar thing, and
right.
They work with him, and we work with Bill. Would we do it? Yeah, I don't see why not. Just isn't something we've ever approached. Ethan Becker did give me a new backpack though that he developed that I've been taking a look at. He when I was a young kid in a Ranger battalion, we used to have our Becker packs. We used to call them. We didn't even know why they were called Becker packs. We didn't know who Ethan Becker was, but we carried him everywhere. On when we were out patrolling, but he's come up with a new one and it's pretty cool. So he's let me play with that thing. But as far as knife designs, no, nothing lately.
Okay.
Probably because we've been so backlogged with designs for so long. We've got this stuff with Bill Harsey. This year, I've got a collaboration fixed blade with Tu Lam, our old Army buddy from Okinawa. We're going to do some kick-ass fighting, nice martial arts type.
That's exciting. That I'm really curious
about. We're excited about it.
A little bit of a Japanese flair into your knives. I think I'm really excited to see that for sure. Yeah.
You guys. I can't
No,
do it.
you can't do it.
Just a tip. Just a tip, okay?
Just a tip.
All right,
There
that's
you
it.
go. That's all you guys get. Just a tip.
But we're doing those fixed blades with two lamps.
I hope
There'll
just
be
a tip satisfied you.
What's that?
I told the chat, I says, I hope just the tip satisfied you.
We're working on some folders, new locking system on a folding knife. That's what it looks like there.
Right.
I know it sounds like I'm teasing on purpose, but man, if we show these knives, we'll get phone calls and emails nonstop for months. And until I've got the final product in hand and we're happy, I'll tell you what, as soon as I release them, I'll let you guys know first. How's that sound?
We'll go on. We'll do it right away. We'll actually, a lot of people asking in the chat as far as CPM3V. Any plans on using CPM3V on any of your knives alongside MagnaCut?
Not right now, no.
Okay.
And there's not a reason not to. We know what steel we like. We know what works.
Yeah.
Every steel is good for something. At one time I thought we might make a tomahawk out of S7 or 3V. Will we do that in the future? Possibly. We've got some interesting things happening here at Spartan Blades in the next year as far as manufacturing. That's going to allow us to do some more products.
I was gonna ask you about a tomahawk. Honestly, I really was. I'd like to see you guys come out with one. I'd like to see you guys come out with a spike.
What type of spike? Like a handheld, small concealable type spike, or?
Yeah, like just something about maybe 6 inches, but not a cutting. I just want a spike. I've been thinking about one, going back and forth with Donnie on one. I did something that's strictly for stabbing and penetration. I think that'd be badass. Like an ice pick type thing, which I have a lovely ice pick collection. Don't ask me why, but I got one. But,
yeah, those are the kind of things you got to give a lot of hard thought
to. Sharon Stone.
Yeah, a lot of tools like our CQB tool, for instance. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. We made a thing called a CQB tool. The Army called us up years ago. Actually, it was our old job at a place called Range 37 at Fort Bragg. And like, hey, man, we got guys they're wrestling on the ground a lot. Bad guys are grabbing their guns. So guys have been taking scissors, I don't have any here, breaking them in half, sharpening them, and putting it in their molly. When you're on the ground, you can't pull a pistol and shoot somebody. You might do a shoot through and shoot somebody in the room at their point of domination. So they're just taking these scissors out and keeping the guys off their guns until the guys are done clearing the room, and then they get the bad guy. And, so we developed a thing called a CQB tool. It's basically an ice pick with a ring on the top. Very, very simple because it's what the Army wanted. And now you see those things all over the place. But I remember when we made it, I'm like, man, I don't know if this makes sense. You can't cut with it. You can't barbecue with it. You can't whittle with it. It's good for nothing. And we almost didn't do it. But the Army assured us, hey, US SOCOM wants these things. Right. They're going to happen. And we collaborated with one of the instructors. They contracted out for hand-to-hand stuff. And man, I think there's companies all over the place that got them now. But I can tell you, we almost didn't make that. It's just all you can do is stab with it, right? You can't cut anything.
Well, yeah. I mean,
it might be too task specific. So yeah, but so yeah, I see where you're coming from.
Those type of things I'm kind of enamored with. I especially the longer I do like this, and it's like every day with knives and every day with stand. I love it. More and more, but I find my mind drifting. I'll never design a knife. I have no desire to do that. But for whatever reason, that CQB spike, right? And we talked about one before we ever went on. I've just got one in my head. And I have you ever had something in your head and you can't put it on paper?
Oh, yeah. It's usually right before I fall asleep and I can't remember what it is the next morning.
Exactly. But I'd like to see something like that down the line. Joe, we got any more comments? I want to make
I have a couple comments. But what do you got there? I'll bring you on. If you want me to bring you larger on screen, I will. Hold on a second.
No, that's the CQB tool, the one we were talking about. Can't think of it.
Okay.
Wherever it is. So.
Yeah, I like the look of that. And so let me ask you on that while we're here, and then we'll pick up with the CQB tool. The idea is here, thumb in the ring here, or
No. So the idea was, and what the Army guys were doing is they're taking scissors and they're wearing it right on the shoulder plate. Because what happens when you get shot at? You know, you do this, or if you fall down. Listen, Green Berets don't fall to the ground to go into fetal position, but your arms end up in here. They found that was a great place to put it because, you know, they had a pistol here, they had their long gun hanging on them, a bunch of other equipment. Bad guys are grabbing for it. So they figured no matter what, their hands are going to be here. So they wanted something they could stick their finger through the ring, hold it.
Yeah.
And it's not even, a lot of law enforcement guys carry them. They're allowed to because it's not made as an attack type thing or a killing knife. It's simply, guys call it a gitfo, get the frick off me knife.
Yeah.
It just creates pain to protect your weapon systems till you can deal with the guy later. And when we made that thing, so yeah, the whole idea is you see a ring. So I figure most bad guys wouldn't recognize it as a tool for that purpose because they just see a round thing there. You know, they're looking for traditional knives and pistols. So they stick their finger through it, pull it out, and jab with it. Just to keep somebody off their firearms. So when we made that, you know, listen, you know, Chinese were making them 1,000 years ago. You know, it's not like some great stealth technology or something. The Army just needed a very simple tool, much like a screwdriver or a hammer. That's why we call it the CQB tool. Right. We were never going to sell them to the general public. Venture came out with one, sold it to the public through the hand-to-hand instructor for Fort Bragg, Greg Thompson, nice guy. So we said, hey, it's out there. To us, it was a TTP, tactics, techniques, and procedures. We don't like to share with bad guys. So we sold it to SOCOM for years as a secret. And then when the other company released it and other people started doing it, we decided, hey, we might as well release it as well. And for years, well, to this day, it's still one of our top sellers, which I find funny. We were talking about a spike earlier. It's so task specific, but the fact that joggers like to carry them for dogs and law enforcement keep them because it blends in with their kit and they can use it for, you know, restraining purposes. That was a strange one.
I walk every night. I walk every night. And so for me, and a lot of people, especially on the internet, good God, all you hear is gun, gun, gun. But most of those folks have never, if somebody's going to slip you or they're going to sucker you or they're not walking out at 50 paces and calling you out. They're going to get on you. They're going to attack you. They're going to. So I always want something, and I don't want to have to do it. I don't want to have to hurt anybody.
Yeah.
But
not worth it.
But I'm going home at the end of you know what I'm saying? I'm going
you
to
should always
home
be
for you.
Right.
You know. So that's kind of what started that drive. You know what I'm saying? Just something just quick, easy, and create space.
Right. And you can keep it almost anywhere. You can use you can clip it in your front pocket. You can put it in your car, tackle box. I've been doing a lot of women run with them, which I found surprising.
Well, I just want something, like you said. Yeah. I mean, and a lot of times, even if it's just to create where you can holler, where you can scream, especially if you're a lady, where you can make, you know, that'll make you holler and scream, especially if you hit them in the right spot with it.
Oh, yeah. That's why it's not sharpened all the way up. It was never meant to kill anybody. It was just to create pain, create space to get to a pistol or run away. Escape, right?
Just to get escape, right? Right. A lot of people are just everyone's throwing into the chat as far as they're using this steel, using that steel. I'll answer for Curtis. I mean, it's every knife company has certain steels that they use and they deal with and they're successful with. So it's not even about trying to get all like 3B may be a good steel, or maybe this particular 9260 spring steel might be good for certain purposes, or the 51 CR4. I know there's a lot of great steels out there, but I don't think knife companies can kind of take all these steels and use them all. I mean, I guess, am I right when I say that, Curtis? I mean, you kind of have certain steels that you're comfortable working with, and you excel with them and you use them.
And you develop relationships. You know, when it was just Mark and I, we had almost no money. Crucible just sent us sheets of steel. They're like, hey, man, we've seen you guys in the military. We appreciate your service. Here's 3 sheets of steel.
That's mad cool.
Who does that? I mean, it's why we were able to go to our first knife show.
Yeah.
Because of Crucible Steel, right? They went through some hard times as well when automotive industry took a hit. The specialty steel portion of the company did great, but their parent company didn't. And they told us, hey, listen, if you'd like to go find another steel company, we understand, because we're not even sure we can send you steel. I said, well, send us steel. You took care of us when we really, really needed you. We're sticking with you till you tell us to go away. Well, they ended up coming out their financial issues in a very good place, in a strong place with a good foundation. And I think they remembered we stuck with them, and we remember they took care of us. So, yeah, there's a lot of different choices and steels out there, but there's also relationships. And we think that's really important. We look at our machinists, our heat treater, our guys who work here in the shop, our customer service. We're a team, right? We're a team of friends, and we're in business together. And that includes the customers too. So we're pretty loyal. We like to stick with people we know and trust. We know CPM steels. We trust CPM steels. When they're developing new steel, they talk to us and ask for our opinion. Not just us, but other American knife companies in our niche. So we trust them. We understand there's a lot of good steels over there. M390 is great. 3V is great. You know what? Most modern steels, and people are going to hate me for saying this, most modern steels are pretty good steels. I remember when ATS 34 came out, they're like, can't make anything else. We get something from Krypton. There is nothing better, and we're still developing.
Still developing steel. Better and better, right?
I was talking to a young guy who came to the shop the other day, and he's talking about steels, and he's right. Some steels are better than other, and it depends what you're using it for, right? Because some have more chromium than the others, some have more carbides than others, some chip but are more durable. But if this was the best steel, where's my phone? If this was the best steel in the world, no matter how I heat treat it, that flat edge isn't going to cut anything.
Right.
If you take a good steel and you understand the capabilities of that steel when it comes to wear resistance, toughness, torsional strength, resistance to staining and rusting, and you shape that blade with the proper geometry that complements the quality of that steel, you're probably going to cut a lot of stuff. You know what I mean?
That's just exactly it. That's really what it's all about. It's about.
If there was one
just like you said. Yeah, go ahead. No, finish up.
No, if there's one perfect steel, I'd be out campaigning with all the knife companies to stop using the crap and use the one good steel. And for that matter, maybe we'll all agree on a great design. We'll all make the same knife, and there'll be no more knife industry. Right. So there's different steels. They're good for different things. Just like we use different steels in engines and in trains and moving parts. It's the same with knives. Sometimes you've got a 3-inch blade and you don't need the shock resistance you would have in a large chopping knife, for example. Yeah. So, do we always use the best steel for the design we're making? We try to. But those folks out there talking about steel, they're right. There's a lot of good steels out there. And depending what you're doing with it, there may be a better option. But you go with what you know, what you trust, what you can get your hands on. A lot of people talk about steels, but what they don't realize is steel's a commodity. You talk to folks at Carpenter or Niagara, they'll buy steel 2 years out, and it'll sit in their foundry before they process it in the street or into steel, into sheet for 2 years. Look what's happened to our economy over the last 2 years. You can have steel that you're finally processing and making for nothing. You're selling it to break even, right? So availability of steel, it can be very, very difficult. We do a bronze line of knives that we design, but we have made in Taiwan with our allies. We've several times this year had to buy steel from Crucible and ship it over there because they have no steel there that they can make, no quality steel they can make knives for us with. I mean, you look at XHP steel. We've talked to the people that make it. They didn't even know they made it.
Really?
Yes. So it's not. It's also about the availability of steel, and it's about pricing. Everybody wants the best knife in the world, but they don't want to pay a lot for it, right?
Right.
So there's a balance when it comes to making things. Price, performance, weight, accomplishing the task that the knife's made for. You got to you got to balance all these things, right? So
See,
it's a little more
that leads
difficult.
me.
Saying, this is the best. I'm getting it. You know.
That leads me up to basically why I like the way you guys market or the way you produce your knives. You have different types of grades, like you have your elite grade, your pro grade, and your field grade. So at least you have many different types of products that you're able to basically get in many different people's hands, depending on what you're looking for. So can you talk about that a little bit in terms of your different
Sure.
grades? I mean, I could put it on screen as
Yeah.
well so people can see what I'm looking at as well.
Let me tell you where we were coming from before we teamed up with
Yeah.
K-Bar. You know, Mark and I, we found what we thought was the best steel we could get our hands on, the best heat treat, the best coating, the best handle material, double deep cryo. And we would say, listen, you know, if you don't want a Lamborghini, then go buy a Ford Pinto. That's not our problem. But you quickly find out, it is your problem. Because you're supplying knives to soldiers, young people, maybe a guy with 5 kids. Listen, there's millionaires out there that aren't going to buy a $500 knife. They're just not going to do it. They're not knife guys. So we're slowly becoming kind of a self-licking ice cream cone where this is what we make. If you don't like it, don't buy it. But, you know, we're right here at Fort Bragg. You get young guys who walk in the door, and they know the name of every knife you make. Aries, Orcos, Defensa, Moros. They know how much it weighs. They know what the coating's on, but they can't afford it. I mean, what good's a knife if you don't have it? So we had to step back, take a good hard look at ourselves and say, hey, listen, we need to make knives at different price points that people can afford. I'm sorry, someone's trying to buy a knife at 8:00 at night. Sorry about that. Anyway, so we said, hey, listen, in order to give people different price points, we're going to have to use a material that allows us to get to that price point. So we're like, how do we approach that? We said, we don't want to make crap. So whatever price point we're at, we have to make the best quality knife we can at that price point and make it a good value, whether it's a $100 knife or a $600 knife. So we looked at how we do that, and we came up with 3 lines of knife. And I see you got them up here. We have our gold grade. And that's the stuff we make with CPM steels, world-class heat treat, PVD coating. We make them right here in North Carolina in our shop. And we have our silver line, which are knives that are made out of 1095 Crovan, and we leverage K-Bar and Cutco's ability to manufacture at scale to reduce our cost. So gold line knives are made by us in North Carolina. Silver line knives are made by K-Bar up in Olean, New York, our design, Bill Harzy's design. And then the bronze line knives are knives that we design, engineer, and then we work back and forth with folks in Taiwan until we get a prototype we're happy with. We say, okay, we're okay with putting our name on this knife. Go ahead and run them. We have them make them that are shipped over here from Taiwan. So that's why we have gold, silver, and bronze, so that we can, we were missing 95% of the knife market because we're making very high-end, high-quality knives. And we just wanted to make lower price point knives that were a good bargain for what they were, with good features, good steels, and a decent design. I mean, just because a knife's, $150, $160, $90, it doesn't have to be a piece of crap. It doesn't have to be. So that's kind of where we're at now. To get off our high horse a little bit and look at reality and remember what it was like to be an E3 or an E4 or a private in the military. And then, you're going on deployment and you get a list, knife, 1 each, combat. Well, half the units in the Army won't issue you anything. So you have to go out and buy it, right? So it's, okay, we'll get half the amount of diapers to go get a freaking fixed blade knife to take to combat. So you look at that Harzy Fighter or Silverline knife, we're really, really happy with that. And it's going to be a decent price point. They can jump with it. They can sky with it. They can deploy with it. So you have a lot of doing that. So that was the mindset and why we have the 3 different price points of knives. I can tell you what we never did consider: going to China. Get calls all the time. All the time. I get that. They send me prototypes in the mail. We don't even design. Beautiful stuff. I was like, no. I try to stay away from people and social commentary and these type of things, But hey, we're not going to have little kids in communist countries, slave labor, making our knives. So it's not happening.
Well, the guys in Taiwan make some of the best knives out there. There's,
They do.
I mean, that's just a fact.
They're
Absolutely.
artisans there, man. They are artisans there.
And,
But
I'll be honest with you, I didn't realize it. There's people in Taiwan who've made, there's some guys out there who've made knives for every knife company in the United States. Even some of the ones that say we only manufacture in the U.S., they do, with knives they made for decades in Taiwan to build cash to buy machines and manufacture in the U.S. It's a plan. Works. They're an ally. Makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Well,
There's some great craftsmen. What's
they know
that?
what they're doing. I said they know
They
what
do.
they're doing.
Yeah.
And
Their
man,
quality is well way up.
yeah, and you got people over there, husband and wife teams, that have been making Kydex sheaths for just about every American gun company in the United States. You tell me you want a knife sheath, they're like, oh, thank God,
Yeah.
Yeah. So we haven't done a whole lot of that. We will do more of that stuff. If there is a Taiwan, next year or two, we'll see.
Yeah, that's a whole other conversation. There is one thing. I mean, we're going to probably close this off pretty soon. But there's one thing that actually was kind of interesting. I saw into the chat, and let me see, splitting slices. Let me see if I can find it here. When you have like a company like Ontario closed down, and let's just say they're supplying like a special purpose axe, like you mentioned here, splitting slices. Do you find that? I'll actually putting them up on screen here. He says, is there a need for a special purpose axe, combined axe breach tool for military first response? Like, do you find that when a company like Ontario closes down, do you find a demand to kind of fill in the gaps anywhere else from what they were doing before?
We don't here at Spartan Blades because we haven't done a lot of government contracting. We tend to stay away from it, to be honest. I think we'll probably end up going down that road here soon with the different price points. But when it comes to the military, usually it's the lowest bidder. And I think that I don't speak for Ontario, and I don't know, but I know enough people in the industry to know that nobody wanted to compete with them for the government knives they're making because they couldn't make them cheap enough.
Right.
You hear about razor fights to the bottom. You see it all the time in industry after industry, whether it's contracting, military contracting, providing parts to the government. How do you beat out another guy? Well, 80% of the time it's you make it at a lower price. You can only race to the bottom so quickly before you start making substandard things and things people don't want. So sharp, pointy, comfortable handle with quality materials.
And
that's what it is. I like where you listen. I like the direction that Spartan is going in. It's almost like you're on it's like K-bar to like the 10th power. It's just a different type of class of knives. Okay, that basically you're putting the Spartan name on it, especially Harzy. When you have Harzy involved, it's just the one thing that I had told you off the live, and I'll say on the live, is the one thing that I really don't like about any of these knives, okay, all three of these knives, is the fact that I don't even want to use them because they look so good. I mean, I don't even want to mar the edge. They're like museum pieces. I mean, the fit and finish, and I'm big on fit and finish because I'm, coming as a sword guy, I preach fit and finish. I love to have things put together well, and the fit and finish has to be perfect, or at least close to perfect. And these pretty much go into that upper echelon in terms of the perfection of fit and finish. I mean, even just basically how it's a full tang, but the way you guys produce the handles, it's almost like your full tang is like hidden. It's that type of fit and finish that I look for. And that's why I feel like I don't even want to use it because it looks so damn good.
Loan it to Scab for 2 weeks.
Exactly.
And then I'll give it to you. You cut with them, so that's why I don't feel so bad about cutting with them after that.
I'll ugly it up. The thing is this. Here's the thing, okay? And I get where you're coming from, Joe. And I'll be honest with you. I've said this a couple times. The longer you do it, like when somebody gifts you a knife, right? Like there's knives for the channel. There's knives that folks send us for the channel. But it's like when somebody gifts you a knife and you're looking at it going, damn, I don't want to, I want to save the edge, I want to do all that. But the truth is, like with Spartan as good as they look when you start to use them and they're sharp, like when you go to use that defense of the MagnaCut, and I can tell you this from the K-bar, the one that Hansel and Gretel didn't like, but the K-bar and MagnaCut that Spartan did, it is a different level of sharp. It is. And it cuts for longer, and it's just fun to use. I think what you'll find, like when you use that defense, is it's hard to put down. I really do. You know, they're gorgeous, but they work. And then you get that MagnaCut, and it's just like, okay. And the chopper, I still, like I said, the damn C-Cree. You can cut a sandwich, or you can go out and beat on a stump, and it's just there. And it's still, the fit and finish holds up good. So I dig it. Dig it. Curtis, thank you for being on with us, man. Is there anything you would have done differently with Spartan?
No,
Like,
no. I've never been a proponent of looking backwards in life. Mark and I have talked for years about developing a time machine so we can go fix things. But of course, building that girl robot keeps getting in the way. But, all kidding aside, I just I don't like looking backwards. You be honest with yourself about the mistakes you made and you correct them. And then you move forward, right? When you accomplish your mission, set another one, set more goals for yourself and try to accomplish those things. I've learned a lot, and some of them are, things like forgiveness. I'm a lot easier guy to work with now in business, I think. And I say this all the time, and it sounds like pie in the sky stuff, but if you treat people right and you do good things and you make a good product, you don't have to sell it hard. You don't see pictures in our marketing of, me rappelling out a helicopter with fire shooting behind me and all that crap. Chris Reeve told me a long time ago, because I talked on another podcast about mentorship. But he told me, he goes, hey, listen, you guys are going to sell knives because you're Green Berets. You're still young. You're still fit. It's 15 years ago, right? He goes, you're going to sell knives because you're Green Berets. But if you make shit knives, you're going to have a moniker. And it's going to be the Green Berets who make shit. And that stuck with me, man. We don't always get it right, but when you make a mistake, we're honest with ourselves about it. We try to improve our craft. But you got to treat people right, and you got to do good things. And business, when you do that, money would be the byproduct of that. Our industry was down 18 to 20% last year. We grew a little more than that last year. And, we're trying to identify how and why so that we can replicate it next year. And we just realized if you get up, you go to work in the morning, do the best job you can, you treat people with respect, you don't bullshit them, and you make a good product, you'll be okay. I think that's it. But I don't think it ever makes sense to look backwards. Learn from your mistakes, but don't wish for things that you didn't get because you don't know what could have happened. There's some things in life. When I was a young Marine, I was young and dumb. I was 19 years old. I had a captain call me in his office. He goes, hey, man, you're a good Marine. You're doing good things. I was a Marine before I was in the Army. He said, we want to send you to Navy prep school, to the Naval Academy. And I was like, well, I don't want to go to some freaking prep school. And if I wanted to join the Navy, I would have joined it. I'm happy right where I'm at. He's like, okay. Why he didn't bitch slap me and tell me, hey, we're offering you a free world-class education. It's worth a few $100,000. He didn't do that. And for years I regretted not doing that. But you know what? I might be dead now. My ship might have got sunk, might have died on USS Cole. You can't look backwards. It's a shitty way to look at things. You got to look forward. You got to drive forward. You got to set mission and goals for yourself, develop a tribe, and then go get it.
Well, that's what I was hoping you'd say, honestly, because the simple fact is, if you change anything, you're not going to end up where you're at.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
And absolutely. Very well said.
If you don't try in first place, you for sure won't succeed.
Yeah. Man, I appreciate it. I want you to know.
I love talking to you guys. I could do this weekly. Well, we're not going to do it.
We can do that.
We could. But definitely when you want to start actually showing those new products, let us know, and we'll set something up, right away, and just have like a break-in show. and just so we can show the products before the release, I think that'll be perfect. Just
Okay.
yeah, we'll definitely set that up.
Hey,
Yeah.
one last thing, Scab. Have you lost some weight?
A little bit.
Yeah. You look good, man.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah.
I lost right at 80 pounds.
Yeah. Been behaving myself lately, too. I
Uh-huh.
plan on living forever. This guy lived long enough so Elon Musk can put my brain into a nice robot. So.
That's what I'm holding on for. That's what I'm holding.
Which we all are. Curtis, this was fantastic. And
Yeah, it was a good time.
everyone that's in the room, thank you for contributing. Thanks for sticking around with us for so long. If we didn't get to your comment, maybe just try to put it into the comment section, and maybe we could have Curtis answer it later on or something like that. I think that'll work out. Somebody had asked though, really quick, Curtis, do you have like a storefront, like a place where people can visit, like a showroom?
We do. We've got a showroom. It's by appointment only. You know, we're a manufacturer more than we are a store, but we got a nice showroom with all our products in there. If you're in town or nearby, give us a call the day before just to make sure we're going to be here, and then come on by. We're happy to take care of you.
There's your answer, Matthew, because he's saying he drives every day past Spartan Blades on US Route 1 in Southern Pines. Yeah.
Yeah, Tom. Yeah,
Okay.
Give us a call. Come on by. We're happy.
There's your answer, Matthew. There's your answer.
Yep.
So
We're
thank
waiting
you
on
for
you,
that,
man.
Curtis. Thank you for that, Curtis. Curtis, as always, thanks for. It's always a pleasure to have you on. Always a pleasure to see your knives. Can't wait to get these things a little dirty and seeing what they got. Beautiful knives. I love your products. I really do. And I love your motto. I love how you have the different grades and you're not leaving anybody out. You want to be able to have everybody experience the quality of the Spartan has. And regardless of your budget, you're able to get into a knife with within your website, which is good. And I like the fact that you guys are doing that to try and include. Yeah, I love that, to include everybody. So there you have it, guys. Spartan Blades. Here's Curtis, the man himself, founder, one of the founders of Spartan Blades. And we'll definitely have Curtis on again as far as new products coming in. Always a pleasure. And yeah, definitely. And thanks for joining us. Scab, you want to close it up with anything?
Appreciate y'all sticking with us, man. Really enjoyed this. This has been a good one. Thank y'all for hanging out. Joseph, wrap us up.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us on Blade Talk again with Scab and Joe. We sincerely appreciate it. Everyone have a good night. Curtis, thank you. And we'll see you
I
very
appreciate
soon.
it, guys. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Awkward pause.
Awkward pause.